play down to our opponents is KU really is notoriously good for playing up to the level.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to say because KU always is at least that level, because KU's been such an elite program for at least our viewing lifetime that when KU goes places, it's all right. We're playing a team of an equal caliber, opposed to playing some juggernaut team. There's been a few occasions where KU is the underdog, but I mean, I would say KU is the underdog against Duke.
I would agree with that.
And they played fantastic basketball, an 11-point win. The game probably was a little closer than that, but KU really that's how they go. And so I would say from the Atlantis tournament, the biggest thing was complacency and effort. And it didn't look like anybody was excited. The word was Wiggins had the flu.
Yep.
I think they got too caught up in the moment and the fact that they were just in the Bahamas and didn't really focus on what they actually were there for.
It wasn't – I agree. I don't think that they were there 100% for basketball. And you have to be 100% checked in. And Villanova's a good basketball team.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they're going to get a lot more credit. But I still think KU should have handled that game.
I agree with that. And I think Villanova's also a more experienced team. And, again, they can handle going down and –
They can handle things like that.
They can handle playing in an environment like that. And
that's why young kids can't have nice things because
it's true.
They don't know how to handle it.
It's true. And, yes, the Wiggins sickness was talked about quite a bit, but other players have to step up and rally around that, and you could tell Self was furious with how they played against Villanova on Friday night.
I don't blame him at all.
Go ahead.
No,
I think it's one of those things that this team is so talented and so depth at each position that we shouldn't have to rely on Andrew Wiggins to constantly, whether he's sick or whether he's healthy, to constantly every day put up 15, 20
It's not
points
the
a
Andrew
game.
Wiggins show.
Yeah,
by any
it's
means.
not the Andrew Wiggins show.
And it's never been like that with Self's team.
Exactly.
Is,
It's
I
never
think,
been
a blessing.
revolved around one player either. So I think that's where role players need to step up in certain situations when your star player isn't performing to his level, where you need to step up and kind of counteract what he's not doing out on the floor.
I think two players and you're talking about people stepping up. I think two players that had good tournaments down there were Frank Mason and Joel Embiid.
I'm going to go ahead and throw in a third and say Tark Black.
Yeah,
I think
he looked much better than he did before.
Yeah, we talk about how bad we looked in the Bahamas, but I think Tark Black showed, he can play. And one thing that with Black that I guess really surprised me is he's got a great left move or left-handed shot or left-handed layup, and having both sides of that with such a big body that he has, that's gonna pay dividends.
That's an experience thing that he has that essentially no one else on the team has, which is an interesting thing.
And you look at Tark Black, and you got to think, he's maybe a guy that's going to have to step up this year and say, a Sweet 16 game when we're down 5 or down 15 in the first half with 4 minutes left. Tark Black's going to be a guy that's saying, "Hey, let's go, let's get it going," and he's going to kind of have to be a leader,
absolutely.
even though he hasn't been around in the program very long.
Yeah, but the issue with Tark Black, though, is how long is he going to be able to stay on the floor before he starts getting in foul trouble?
And I think it's a matter of time till Embiid takes a spot.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And Self said
agree.
he needs more minutes, and they need to find times to get out there. Well, the first way you start of getting someone more minutes is by starting him because that's just simple math.
Tark Black only played 8 minutes in that game versus Villanova.
Yeah, and he had 3 fouls, and matchups determine a lot of things. Like Embiid had that great game against the team who only had no one over 6'8", so it's kind of a natural thing, and it varies week to week. But I still think Self, and this isn't to blame Self because Self knows what he's doing more than anyone ever, basically in college basketball, maybe besides John Wood, but he's still messing with these lineups and who's he going to play. And you think Brennan Green's going to play a lot one day. He hits a couple shots against Duke, and then you don't see him for 4 games. And then Connor Frankamp's out there, but he hasn't shot the ball. Because he has an incredible shot, but he hasn't shot the ball very well. And then you think Andrew White's good, and he does a couple dumb things, and he's riding the pine again. So it's kind of this this give and take thing.
Finding your identity sort of thing.
Yeah,
as well.
the blessing about KU basketball is you're never going to worry about them getting the tournament.
Yeah.
And so this whole time really is to figure out what are the issues and going forward. Obviously, we want them to get a good seed, but going forward, that's all it is.
That being said, too, you also have to keep in mind we're just entering December. We've only played a month of basketball. We still got the month of December, January, February, and then March. We haven't even started conference play yet. So there is going to be time to adjust and adapt and figure out what your definitive role is on this team.
Yeah, one thing I took away from the game after Friday night is instead of just being real disappointed, I kind of looked back and thought about the Michigan State game last year in Atlanta and how early that game was, and we lost a tough one down the stretch. And once we got into March of this year, of 2013, did anybody actually look back at the Michigan State game and say, man, I really wish we would have won that game?
Yeah.
It's just one of those
and
early,
KU Kentucky 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Ended up making the national championship and was a complete different team.
Yeah.
So you got to take these early season losses so lightly, and that I think that's one thing with Kansas fans is we're just not used to it, and
I'm pretty okay with it.
I'm okay with
and
it too.
I don't know what the average fan is like, but from I guess my immediate critical eye, I'm pretty okay with it.
I'm okay with it, and I know you're okay with it too, and Ryan probably is
but
as well.
To have a good time, I would like to see him win. Just
yeah,
for,
exactly.
As a fan, but
Yep.
From a critical standpoint,
It's a good loss to have in my eyes. Especially,
I don't think there's ever such thing as good loss. But
Well, in
once
my
it
eyes,
happens, if you don't learn from it, then that's when it's a mistake.
I think there is because, like you just said, if you do build
you think
upon
there's
it,
a good loss?
especially this early in the season.
I bet.
I think because
ask any coach in the country if there's a good loss, and they would laugh in your face and say, "No way."
And that's why I'm not coaching.
That's probably why you're not coaching.
But in my eyes, I think it's because if you are able to build upon those mistakes and grow as a team and a unit, especially this early on in the season, and not to discredit Villanova because they are a good team and they do consistently compete each and every year. For a team like that, that's not necessarily a bad nor a good loss. I think, but it's a loss that, in my eyes, needs to happen to show that this team is vulnerable in certain aspects, in which case there is still room to improve.
I would rather just never be vulnerable, but I think that now that the loss has happened, going forward they can.
I would agree with Jackson. You never want a loss. I mean,
especially
going into a game, that's a terrible mindset to have, but.
Everything after the buzzer sounds,
yes,
that's when you can make that adjustment. That's fine.
Yeah, if you ask Coach Self, well, Coach,
is
I'm
that
sure
a loss your team needed? He would go,
yeah.
Heck no.
Yeah.
That would have been that'd be probably a good question to ask him at some point.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna switch over to KU football. KU basketball has a lot of room in front of them, and they'll make their changes. And Coach Self definitely has a good grasp on what he's doing. So now KU football, we'll do a little bit of a season in review. Of course, they lost their last game the Saturday, the 30th, against Kansas State, the tail end of Thanksgiving break. So maybe some students that weren't in town and maybe some people from Manhattan were able to come in town as well. 31-10. A couple trick plays, the jump pass, but enough to get K-State a comfortable win where it really never was in doubt. So that will put KU's record for the season at 3-9, 1-8. In Big 12 play. So they did finally win a conference game against West Virginia, who West Virginia beat Oklahoma State. And then you could actually, there's a trail of teams
so on and so
where
forth.
KU can beat Alabama.
And,
So it's legitimate. KU's the real deal.
Yep.
But actually, I think that trail is KU, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss,
yep.
Auburn.
And then
No, Ole Miss, LSU, Auburn,
then Alabama.
Yep. So
yes, it makes perfect sense.
KU football is better than Alabama, of course. You're listening to the Pregame Sports Talk Radio. Feel free to tweet in to any of our accounts or on KJHK Sports. We'd be happy to answer your questions. All right, so the season in review, I think the biggest question is, and I don't think it's a question of if it's going to happen or not, because I think Weiss will be staying around, but does he deserve another year?
I think you have to give him another year, and I think a lot of it goes on recruiting, and we've talked about this before. You can't just keep cycling these coaches over and over.
I agree. I think that's the biggest thing.
And you can't keep paying. We're still paying Mangino, I think, still paying Gill, and you can't be paying 3 coaches at once. And boosters aren't going to want to support a team that does that. And who's going to want to come coach here? You're trying to get a big name, and Charlie Weiss, I guess, is kind of the big name.
Yes.
And
sure,
but if you fire Weiss after 2 years, I think you look back and you say, where are we going from here?
And this isn't because I agree with you, but the progress, the visual progress, if you look at the margin of the games,
yep.
This was worse than last year. KU played in some games. They didn't get the Big 12 win.
They competed though.
And last year, and this year,
last year they competed.
and this year they're awful. The margins of losses are horrendous. The closest Big 12 loss was 10 points to TCU.
Yep.
And TCU proved to really not be that good. They actually finished second to last in the standings, with just 2-7. So, I mean, I think they regressed this year.
I would agree with the regressing on the field, but I think again when you look at off the field, when Weiss came in and took this program over from Gill, it was as far rock bottom as you can get. And I think taking baby steps and fixing things off the field is going to eventually turn into
The
on the
growth
field.
now is going to come quicker.
It is.
Okay.
I think it is personally, and yeah, we only got one Big 12 win, but it was one more than last year, and you take baby steps and you think, okay, maybe next year you get 5 wins, and then you come back the next year and you're going for a bowl game.
Yeah, Ryan?
Yeah, you touched up on it a little bit, Alex, and I think we got that one Big 12 win. We got 2 more wins than last year. So yes, it is slow growth and slowly progressing to where we.
But where you are measured is how you play within the conference, and it was worse this year.
True. But I think there's off the field stuff that Alex pointed out also. Academically, the players are doing a lot better.
Can you call him Blau? This is kind of getting weird.
Oh, Blau. Okay.
There
Blau.
we go.
Blau.
All right.
Okay.
Fixed it.
Blau talked about off the field-ish stuff like the grades, keeping guys out of trouble. Little stuff
Strength and conditioning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stuff that goes unnoticed that doesn't always necessarily reflect upon how they play on the field, but stuff that little things that are slowly progressing and making the program as a whole better. However, that being said, I think that if there's not significant improvement with next year's roster and how we play next year in Big 12 play, then significant thought may need to go into another possible coaching change.
I think when you look at the Big 12 this year as a whole, too, I think the Big 12 is a lot better than it was last
tough
year.
This year.
It was. There were some good teams.
And they really haven't played each other until the end of the year.
Right.
This week's matchups in the Big 12 are incredible.
They're unbelievable.
So
half the teams are ranked in the top 25.
Yep.
Which is good. It's good to see the Big 12, I guess, be better. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Here's the Auburn versus Alabama call. I'm sure you heard it, or at least heard of the news. Really an incredible call of if you can hear this. That is Chris Davis catching a missed field goal, so kind of an oddity play in itself. That is Chris Davis catching a missed field goal from 9 yards deep in his end zone, and he takes it back in the last play of the game, and Auburn beats Alabama I think, in my life, the best final play I've ever seen in my life.
I think that may go down as the greatest college football game I may ever see.
Yeah.
When I think of big game-ending plays, I think the other big game-ending play that I think of is 05 when Vince Young ran it in,
that was incredible.
But there were still 12 or 13 seconds left on the clock. So when you talk about
Vince Young's play was awesome.
Oh, it was great. But
that'll be a memory for my life.
Well, me too. But when you talk about a walk-off type football game and a win, this was as good as it can get. And you talk about a football rivalry that, in my opinion, it trumps any other.
Yeah, I mean, especially recently, if you've looked at when Auburn went on with Cam Newton to win the national championship game, they had to come all the way back against Alabama. I think it was in Tuscaloosa as well.
It was.
And that was an incredible football game.
It was. And just one more thing, I think when you look at what Auburn so Cam left, and then you looked at Auburn the 2 years after, and they were kind of in the bottom. I think they only won 3 or 4 games a couple years ago, and to look at what they've done,
they only won 2 games in conference.
Yeah, but
they won 0. They were 0-8 last year.
Yeah, I was going to say
in conference, and Mizzou only won 2 games. Who's their opponent in the SEC championship game.
Big turnaround, and I think the latter half of the SEC teams this year, like you said, with Mizzou and Auburn. But I think that play that'll go down as probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, in history, in my eyes.
It's the shining moment of the Iron Bowl.
Exactly, and that eclipsed the Cal Stanford game of the band is on the field.
Ooh.
I mean,
the thing is, I agree that it has this element because it's a missed field goal return.
Exactly.
Where it does have the weird
comeback
element.
too.
Yes, and they scored with under a minute as well. And then of course when Saban tries to get that extra second with the review,
he got his extra second that he wanted.
I mean, it really it was funny to me because it was kind of Saban doing himself in. He got this extra second, and of course you wouldn't expect anything like this to happen. But at the same token, I would expect Saban to be like, maybe just throw it here because I'll have more athletes on the field to make the tackle if they do intercept it. Whereas in this case, he had really the best chance for them to tackle Chris Davis was a holder and a kicker.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not a good chance because
Great heads up play by Auburn too to
Oh,
stick
yeah.
somebody back there. I mean, honestly, when he was kicking the field goal, I was kind of pondering like, I wonder if they're putting anybody back there, and then they started calling it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
really one of the coolest things.
Yeah, I mean, in Nick Saban's eyes, I think this would not be a good loss for them or the Alabama program.
I don't think this. Yeah, a little
By
late
any
in the
means,
season.
Too late in the season.
To be a good loss.
It's going to take some miracle to get back into the national
Does this send Nick
championship
Saban to Texas too?
talks.
That would be a hell of a parting shot.
Wow.
Between him and Alabama. I don't know. Texas has been better this year,
When
so
you build
maybe.
a dynasty like he has, it's kind of hard to part ways
Yep.
from
But
something.
he did say the only place he'd ever go would be Texas.
True.
So that's an interesting point as well. Hopefully we'll see something on that with the offseason as it draws near. You're listening to the pregame on 90.7 FM. You're actually listening to it on Media Crossroads on the internet. So thanks for tuning in. Stay with us, and we'll be back and we'll talk some NFL, some Chiefs versus Broncos as well.
I got no pulse for losing.
He's in beefing.
Shocking.
Tries to run all the time. Just had a few drinks. Just can't be happening.
Are we clear?
Clear.
We just buzzed.
Just buzzed. You didn't tell us that, sir. You're right. This isn't happening. He'll be fine.
I feel good.
Really?
No, not really.
Buzz driving.
Clear.
Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Shocking.
Welcome back in to the pregame. I'm Jackson Long, Alex Blau to my left, Ryan Levine to my right. No Mike Makey tonight. He still did get his picks in, so we'll do our last round of picks, and we'll do that in the last portion of the program. But Mike's calling the women's game tonight. That's at 7 p.m. So if you want to tune in on KJHK, it's 90.7 FM at 7 o'clock, and hear Mike Makey call the KU women's basketball game for KJHK. Before we get to the NFL, which is the biggest deal right now, I'd say, in sports, you could say that college football and the weekend that's coming is pretty important. But for the local crowd, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Royals, per the song that's being played. But Carlos Beltran has been linked with Kansas City Royals. He was in town yesterday. That is a confirmed report, I think initially by the New York Times. That he was in talks with the Kansas City Royals. Of course, he played there in the past, got dealt for money reasons, all-star, and now at age 36, maybe there's a shot to come back to the Royals. And I think the biggest thing is the Royals did make his offer of a 3-year contract, and that's kind of the biggest thing.
That's kind of what's separating.
He wants to be on a contender and have a 3-year contract, and that is kind of what's separating.
We're a
so far.
contender. Wow.
Well, here's the thing: is it's so weird for the common fan and people who aren't working in the game. But according to Bob Dutton, who's been the Royals beach writer, he's actually now taking a job with the Mariners.
Seattle, yep.
But he said the word around baseball, and he's very well connected, is that the Royals are a contender. And to hear that everyone in baseball thinks that's
It's
cool.
awesome. It's cool.
It is cool.
It's awesome.
And if it's cool enough to get Beltran here, then it's really, really cool.
Something that you guys aren't necessarily accustomed to.
No, I don't know what it's like.
I think it's awesome, and I don't know about you, Jackson, but Carlos Beltran's like that one link from my childhood. I was like just like that one player that was always awesome, and I can remember.
I think
I
Priest,
remember.
Holmes, and Beltran.
Yeah,
That's what I think of.
yeah. Can we bring back Priest too? And
We're not
have
hurting at running back
have
at
him
least.
Peerage won't.
Yeah.
But no, I think when you look at Beltran, he's still got a little bit left in the tank, and
296 last year.
yes, and right field was a big question mark for the Royals last year with Frenchie. Jeff Francoeur playing for half the season and sucking, and David
to put
Lowe,
it bluntly, yes.
to put it bluntly, and then David Lowe proved to be a good replacement, very average but good, and a good ball player. But is it worth it for the Royals to pay 3 years in the reported contract
million?
3 years for 48? And there's a part of I'm very torn because I would love to see Beltran come back. At his age, is it worth it to pay him that much money? Because if you pay him that much money, you're going to have to move Butler.
Butler's. That's the catch-22 is
Butler's
probably gone.
And that's is that something that the Royals need to do to make room for a guy that's 36 and maybe only has 2 years left? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not completely sold, but as from a PR standpoint and from us, it's great.
It's great, except for Billy has kind of been a little bit of the face. I mean, I think Hosmer's more of the face of it, but Billy's got Billy's barbecue sauce. Billy's hit it a ton barbecue sauce. Like that's a real thing, you know. I'm a little torn. I think if we just straight go Billy for Beltran, we don't improve. I think it's a wash. But I think if what we get for Billy, we need to get something that is tangible in the MLB now. It's gotta help this year.
Yep.
And I don't know what that is. Some rumors are it's Nick Franklin from the Mariners.
Yep.
Who's a pretty highly touted
He's been solid.
second base prospect, which would fill a need.
Yep. Mark Ellis has been talked about coming in and playing second base as well.
And I can speak for Mark Ellis and say that that is a solid role player right there, and that he does his job. He gets on base. He fields. He's your perfect role player.
You talk about a clubhouse guy too.
And he's very likable amongst everyone in the clubhouse too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is obviously. I mean, I think Casey's pitching rotation last year pitched above their ceiling. I don't think they'll pitch that well next year. But they're gonna have to count on a guy like Ventura, a guy like Danny Duffy, and maybe Kyle Zimmer. I think 2 of the 3 have to be MLB players this year, and that's assuming that Santana won't be back. And I think that's almost as good as done.
And I think also when you look at Beltran, and you need a guy that's kind of been around the playoffs because our team is so young, and
no one knows
last year was the closest we've ever gotten to a playoff atmosphere, and that was getting within 2 games of the division and wild card. But you bring Beltran in, and you've automatically got a great clubhouse guy. And if you get to the playoffs and you're in a position, he's a terrific postseason hitter. And you talk about a guy that could, go out on top with the team he came up with. I mean, Beltran winning a World Series in Kansas City would just be the cherry on the cake.
It would be a great story. It honestly, the playoffs need to happen for a lot of people, and that includes Dayton Moore. And I mean, it just has to happen. If James Shields is going to be around, it's got to be a playoff year. I mean, there's been too much now investing, especially if Butler goes and they're spending this money on Beltran, then
it's got to happen.
Yeah, and
so
there's
just no excuse.
We'll learn a lot more with the winter meetings that come up this weekend, but I mean, the time is now.
And
I don't know what the slogan's going to be this year. Our time
now.
Or we're desperate, or
I think a week from now, when we're talking next week, I think we're going to be talking about a lot of new faces on the Royals. Winter meetings is always a time where we see a lot of things happen, and I think at this time next week, Carlos Beltran will be a Royal, and I think you could see a guy like Mark Ellis be a Royal too. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Of course, not I guess too-time pertinent, but always good to talk the Royals, especially when it gets colder outside, and it has gotten colder outside today, especially compared to yesterday. Now we'll transition to the Kansas City Chiefs here, and this is kind of it's a sore subject almost for the Chiefs at this point because I mean, it just hasn't gone well recently. It's 3 straight losses, of course, 2 of them to Denver, sandwiching a loss to San Diego. The offenses look better. Then Alex Smith has played some good football. The defense has not. It's looked atrocious. Marcus Cooper has been exposed thoroughly by Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers. And so a lot of kind of reevaluations at this time. And I don't want to say the season's not over, and I'm the furthest person to say that. But does Denver have KC's number?
Yes, right now they do, and I think a lot of that is on the shoulders of Marcus Cooper, who has just been awful. And
Yes.
and we talk about a guy, a month and a half ago, if you would have said, yeah, you're not gonna like Marcus Cooper in a month and a half, I would have been like,
said,
what are you
crazy,
talking
bro.
about? Marcus Cooper's been terrific, but boy did Peyton just I like this.
Yeah, this is our Chiefs talk music, so it's
There
fine.
you go. But
Yeah, Peyton destroyed him.
you did, and my big thing is, and I think you can agree with this, when you look at the top three receivers in Thomas, Decker, and Welker for the Broncos,
They're awesome.
they're awesome and they're incredible, and there's not another team in the NFL that has that good of receivers.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you look at a guy like Marcus Cooper and think, all right, you're going to be guarding Eric Decker and you're going to be guarding Demaryius Thomas, you think, I'm sorry, rookie, but, this is what you got to do. And he's probably the third best cornerback on the team. So
Yeah. Jake tweets in that Flowers looked as bad as Cooper did, and he did. If you look at the numbers, that you think probably your best guy, Brandon Flowers, looked just as bad as Marcus Cooper did. And so, it's just whenever you think you have something figured out, and I think the Chiefs thought they had something figured out. Their safeties were up. They played the hell out of the crossing routes, didn't do anything to the Chiefs.
Yep.
And Peyton exposed him deep. And with an arm like Peyton, where you think it's maybe, he throws floaters up in the air, he did everything perfect. It was spot on. Put balls deep to Decker. Decker had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, Decker was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unreal.
The real sad part about these last 3 losses is I think it has been Alex Smith's best games of the season, and I even saw a tweet the other day, or it might have been today, that said it's sad because this has been the 3 best games of Alex Smith's career, and when you think about that, it's just sad that
it's a positive sign.
It's
and
positive.
It's a silver lining of what's been a bad 3 weeks.
It is, and losing Justin Houston, I think we saw is just so huge.
A combination of Manning being able to expose a cornerback and a lack of a pass rush is lethal, especially against Peyton Manning.
Yep.
And, it's proved to be ugly.
Yeah,
So.
in my eyes, these last 3 games for the Chiefs, it's really been the first time all season that they've faced good elite quarterbacks. I know Blau talked about it earlier in previous weeks that they haven't really faced like an elite quarterback. These past couple of games. And,
Yeah, I think Tony Romo's would be the second best quarterback they've faced.
But other than that, you go up against like the Browns and Jacksonville. You guys are facing backup quarterbacks because due to injuries or whatever the case may be. But now that you faced guys like Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers, you're really
I think
the
Peyton
defense is
Manning's
being exposed.
a different level than anyone.
True.
But I think Phillip Rivers is a
solid quarterback.
I don't know if I want to say great, but very good NFL quarterback, and it's enough to score 41 points. And really, the defense was all sorts. If you looked at the game though, against the Chargers, there were 3 points scored when Houston and Hawley were in the game.
Yep.
When both of those players went down with injury, it turned into just a shootout, a track meet, a back and forth college like Oklahoma State versus Oregon type game where the teams just score every time.
Yep.
And it was almost a joke really. But it just turned into that.
And looking ahead at the next 4 games, I think you look at 3 out of the 4 games, you're going to be facing good quarterbacks again. And no, RG3 is not, he hasn't been rookie RG3,
But
he's still good. He's still good. And then
He's still mobile.
He's at least for sure a top 4 that the Chiefs have played.
And then
so
you
far
look
this year.
and then you look at Andrew Luck and coming back.
That'll be
Rivers.
that'll be the game that means the most to me.
I agree
Because I don't think
any game?
I don't think there's a single game for the rest of the schedule that really matters to me. If KC loses out, then maybe they might not make a wild card. But with how bad the rest of the AFC is, then it's much more likely that that they're going to make the playoffs regardless.
Are you saying that's the most important game because that's the most
Because-
likely playoff matchup?
Because I don't think it's a playoff matchup, but it's the best determination of if KC will be able to win their first-round game.
Yeah, because
they're
it's
going
either going to
against
be
Indy
Indianapolis
or
or Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
I completely agree
And
with that.
I don't think they're identical teams, but I think they're similar. They're similar in talent level and quarterback efficiency. I think Lux makes better decisions than Andy Dalton does, but he's not perfect by any means. The Colts have struggled recently, but I think it'll be the best representation of, is this Chiefs team just going to fold over against any quarterback that can put up 28 points?
And keep in mind that we're going to be going on the road too if we nab this
that Indy
wild
game.
card spot.
That's the last home game of the season for you guys. So it'll be a true testament to see whether the defense is able to show up versus those big time quarterbacks and almost kind of reestablish themselves as a great or an elite defense within the NFL.
And the defense has to play well because the offense has been good in the last couple games, but it's not going to carry the team. The encouraging sign is the offenses show that it can be good enough to win when the defense isn't perfect.
Yep.
But I don't take anything into account the rest of the season. Honestly, I'd be okay if Hawley and Houston didn't play a game just to rest up. And I think if Jamal Charles gets 12 carries a game and we rest him up so he's fine, then that's fine too.
I'm okay with keeping Houston out. I don't necessarily agree with keeping Ali out because I think Ali looked
fine.
He looked fine.
Yeah.
And maybe
From
that's
all
just
observations, he looked
maybe
fine.
that's just him, and maybe he's just just real tough. But I'm okay with playing Ali. As far as Houston goes, if we have any chance in the playoffs and potentially winning a couple games, he's got to rest.
Yeah,
I
I don't think you tank the season, but I think that you are. If there's any, if you're on the fence about being cautious about a player, then to me there's no point. I think that you gotta protect your players because you're not going to affect your spot in postseason in these last 4 games.
Yep.
And so I don't know how Andy Reid does it. You don't want to sit them for a month and then they're rusty when they come out again.
Right.
But at the same token, I think that you should prepare your team for the playoffs because that's really the only thing that matters. They have 5 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah, I could see Andy.
That's it.
The only time I can see Andy Reid really resting anybody would be that last game in San Diego, barring we're not, God forbid, playing for a wild card spot. But I think Andy Reid's a smart enough guy to sit back and say, "Hey, I've got a banged up football team."
Yeah, and I think with that also they have they want to make sure the team has a little bit of confidence going in.
Yep.
That's one thing too. But I don't think Bob Sutton's going to throw the kitchen sink at Phillip Rivers in the last game if it doesn't matter.
Right.
So
Completely agree.
I think they hold some stuff up from there as well. So we'll continue on to kind of the broad picture of the NFL. I think probably the biggest thing we saw, obviously the Broncos beating the Chiefs kind of set apart Denver as being for sure the AFC West representative. But what we saw with Seattle against New Orleans the other night was crazy. And I wouldn't have predicted that score. I probably would have said Seattle wins because they play so well at home.
Yep.
But
that was a blowout.
that was a woodshed backside whooping right there.
Yeah, it was.
Talking about a statement game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too. In my eyes, it's between Denver and Seattle as two best teams in the league. I think it's them two and then kind of everyone else.
I would throw the Patriots up there, and if Seattle can play at home in the playoffs, and it appears that will be the case, then they're going to be really hard to beat. And I don't think anyone will. I think they go to the Super Bowl if they play at home because
You might as well just give them the ticket.
Their best challenge was because New Orleans plays pretty good defense against.
They do.
contrary to
I think
popular
New Orleans
belief.
does have an underrated defense.
And they beat them 34-7. And they did. They ran the ball on them. They threw the ball on them. They scored on defense.
They did anything they wanted.
And they made Drew Brees not look that good, which is hard to do.
I think every year and around this time of the year, you see a really good team emerge and have that swagger, and Seattle's got it.
Right now,
they've got a
voice.
stingy defense, and I'm telling you, Russell Wilson, I think right now he is the best young quarterback in the
He's a
NFL.
stud.
Is he
Yes,
an MVP? No, Peyton Manning's the MVP.
Peyton Manning's the MVP. But that doesn't mean Russell Wilson couldn't be the MVP in the next couple years.
Yeah.
I think he's terrific.
He's a stud. He does everything.
He's awesome.
And people said, he's too small. He can't, do this. He's a ball player.
Yeah.
He's a great leader, and he when you look at him, even I was like, wow, it's only his second year. And you look at how he controls that offense, and His decision making is fantastic, and right now I would take Russell Wilson over anybody.
I'd take Peyton Manning for a year because he's.
I'm
but
talking
out of
young,
that
young
group,
quarterbacks.
Out of that group,
young quarterbacks.
that group that we've talked about a couple weeks ago on the show. Yeah, I think he's the best. I think he's. He's played that way. So I think it will be Seattle coming out of the NFC. Now, does the road go through Denver? Or does the road go through New England? And that'll be our last before we wrap up this segment and come back with some picks later.
To me, it still goes through Denver, and I think Denver's the best team in the AFC still. But New England's good, and what's just so incredible about New England is you look at their receiving core and see how much they
Brady
lost.
does it. He just always does it.
He finds a way to win.
And that's
when
why
you're down 24. What was it? 21 or 24?
They're down 21-0 to the.
And he finds a way to
the Broncos, the last team you should ever come back.
Exactly, and he finds a way to do it in an overtime victory. I mean, who does that?
Yep.
Tom Brady. Tom Brady does that.
And the only reason I'm saying it goes through Denver is because Denver's got an extremely easy schedule to end the year, and
they look better in total.
Yeah.
Than I guess the New England
I don't see
has.
Denver losing another game. I'll put it to you that
and
way.
they will play to win every game because they do want that home field advantage.
Yep.
New England, of course, is one game back, but if they would gain a game, if that would happen, then they would have the tiebreaker over the Broncos, of course. You're listening to the pregame on KHHK Sports Talk Radio. Stay with us, and we'll be back with some soccer, actually, to come in, and then the picks for the remainder of the last picks of the year. So stay with us.
Where you go to college makes a statement about you. This place will become a part of you, your identity for life. The University of Kansas, a great place to be you.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back into the pregame. We're talking soccer here because there's so many things going on. Kansas City right now, of course, the Royals call it Beltron. KU basketball, their Battle of Atlantis, and they have a couple road games coming up that should be a little difficult, actually, between Colorado and Florida. Florida game should be pretty good.
Yep.
And then KU football wrapped up. Not as much anticipation for next year, I guess, in that aspect. But it'll be interesting to see because I just don't see how they improve too much. If they're even going to bring in freshmen, and the quarterback situation's another mess in itself. So, but between the NFL and soccer in Kansas City right now, things are looking pretty exciting.
It's a good time to be a Kansas City fan.
It is. It's improving. It has been, for the last couple of years, it's been awful and horrendous. And with Sporting playing for the MLS Cup this Saturday at 3 o'clock, we'll touch on that after our picks. But that's been a good addition to what's been usually a pretty miserable.
Hey, if you're going to jump on the Sporting KC train per se,
I've
I have as well. But if you're going to really jump on and you're not interested, you need to jump on it now.
This would be the 4-day stretch to turn in and watch on it. So the World Cup draw, and this has a little bit of a future impact. The World Cup draw, and of course the United States has looked maybe the best it's looked in a long time in international play. Brazil World Cup this summer, 2014, but the draw where you find out the pools, which is very important.
It's a huge deal.
The groupings for the World Cup are a huge deal.
Who's going to get in the group of death?
Yes. I mean, you don't want to be the team with Spain and England and I think Ghana. That would be an incredible group that is possible.
Yep.
Brazil being the home team. Really, you're going to get stuck with somebody that's really good, and the USA is going to have a tough time beating someone. But that is 10:30 a.m. Friday on ESPN2. If you want to tune into that and watch and see who the U.S. is grouped with. So that'll be an interesting thing for you soccer fans. I know I'll get up for that. I
I
usually sleep
will
in
as
on
well.
Fridays, but that's enough to get me up to watch that game. And maybe I can finish some work after that as well. All right, so enough World Cup talk for now. I'm sure we'll touch on it late next spring if we have the same show together. That's the hope. But for now, it's about the picks. And we're going to do 8 picks this week because in a miracle, after the whole semester of show, between Mike, who's not here, and Alex and I, we are tied. We are tied after a whole semesters long of
Who
show.
would have thought?
I mean, it's insane. It's a joke almost because if you look at the standings, it's 31-17 through the whole. I mean, we're talking so many. I mean, 48 games picked. So that's 12 weeks. We've picked games for 12 weeks, and we couldn't find a single half game difference. I mean, it's a joke. No, like we didn't even pick any of the NFL ties or anything. I mean, it's a joke that we haven't finished. So we picked 8 games this week. And we're going to spend some time on them now. Each team went 2-2 last week to further cement the fact that we would be tied going into this week. Mike picked Oklahoma State over Baylor. That showed up to be pretty conclusive. And I picked Kansas State over OU. OU won by 10 points in that game. Another one of those games where I always pick, and you guys laugh at me, but I'm right. The Cardinals over the Colts.
Good call.
And of course,
Boy, talk about a blowout.
Yes,
another big blowout.
Of course, this was the week before the break, and then Blau and I each picked the Patriots over the Broncos, which was a fantastic game. Kind of ended poorly in overtime, but it was very entertaining to say the least. So we have this week's picks, and we'll spend a little bit more time on them because we have 8, and then we'll allow Ryan to speak on the game as well on his behalf. Even though it's Mike's picks that will continue to be counted. So the first game is KU basketball at Florida, and with KU playing not so hot recently, but they also get to play a big opponent. So, Blau, what do you think about this game?
It's going to be a tough one, and Gainesville is going to be rocking and rolling and ready to go, and especially with the KU being a top 10 team coming in, it's going to be a tough place to win, but. I look at it as a Bill Self game where KU comes in and plays up to their competition, and I think
that's exactly what I think.
And I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be KU by like 5 or 6, maybe a little bit more, but I took the Hawks.
I think that it's like a wake up call. You get back from the Bahamas, and they're going to have a little bit of a practice time, and this game is actually next Tuesday, so we'll be able to talk about it for our final show of the year next Wednesday. But it'll be a wake up call, and I think Self probably is practicing them pretty hard this week and making sure the effort level is there because I think that's what he was most disappointed in. I think KU wins that game. They play about as good as they played against Duke, and I think they beat them by 10 or 11 points.
Yeah. On Mike's behalf, I think.
You have your own opinion. It's totally fine. You don't have to go with what Mike says.
No,
You're a little crazy sometimes.
In all seriousness, this is going to be one tough game for them. Gainesville is never an easy place to play. That place is rocking. It's going to be loud. And I think this has the hype of another Duke game in the sense of the intensity level and how well Florida plays and how well Billy Donovan. That is such a well-coached program too. And I think the way that Patrick Young plays down low, I think it'll be a true testament to see how well our bigs are able to play up against him. But I think there's too much talent and too much depth with KU, and I think that they're going to be able to come out on top.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll be a good chance to see how the big men play against a real quality. Yes, yeah. and I don't think that Duke really has that. Obviously, Jabari Parker, but he's kind of more of a wing player, and Wiggins got to play on him, and he extends from the basket too much. So, yes, it'll be interesting to see. Just another one of those great, and college basketball has had so many great non-conference games so far.
It is such a great year to watch.
It's awesome. It's wonderful. There's so many good teams this year. Oklahoma State beats Memphis by 20, and then comes back and loses to Memphis again in the tournament. So interesting stuff. And that's kind of the blessing of college basketball is where not every game counts per se. Where in college football, if you lose one early in the year, you're out.
Yep.
And so sometimes you shy away from those big matchups.
Boy, and you talk about 2 tough games for KU going. I mean, Boulder is another place. Predominantly KU heavy. as always, but
Allen
they're not
Fieldhouse
the same.
West.
It is, but they're not the same. Colorado team that they once were.
Yep.
We can't just go in there and stomp all over them. So talk about a big wake up call for the young Jayhawks.
Yeah, I missed watching Alec Burks, who was a Kansas City product from Grandview High School.
Yep.
When he's in the league now, of course, doing good things there. The next game, Ohio State and Michigan State. This is college football. This is the Big Ten championship. Ohio State is undefeated, ranked second in most polls, including the BCS, which is the most important poll. And Michigan State has one loss this year. The argument here, if you're going to call for the upset, would be Ohio State just doesn't play well on defense, gives up too many points, and hasn't really played anyone. Michigan State, of course, has one of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah, it's going to be a great matchup. I think the difference in this game is Braxton Miller, and that's why I took Ohio State. I think Braxton Miller is a fabulous quarterback, and you talk about the ups and downs of the Ohio State program the last couple of years.
Yeah, lots of them.
They're almost playing with a chip on their shoulder, and a lot of people are saying, maybe they don't belong here and all that, stuff. But I think Ohio State plays a good football game, and I think Ohio State goes in and plays against Florida State in the national championship.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone both ways on whether or not I think who I think will win this game. Granted, going 25-0 over the past 2 years.
Yes, you're right. They haven't lost a game.
Yeah, they haven't lost a game in 2
That's
years.
a very good point. Urban Meyer hasn't lost at Ohio State.
Exactly, and that says something within itself. But the quality of teams that they've played this year have been extremely down. The teams that they've played haven't been up to par. The Big Ten is extremely down compared to what it has been in past years.
Yep.
But, I mean, I've gone back and forth. I think, though, with the experience that the Ohio State team has, the way that Urban Meyer does coach his teams, Ohio State will come out on top.
I think Ohio State feels like they got shafted last year. And I think that they'll play well. I think they outscore Michigan State. I think it kind of turns into one of those games, a little similar to Michigan. I think Michigan State has good defense,
they
but
probably
I just
still feel like they have something to prove.
I just think that they look at this game and say, all right, it'd be so easy to, I think Michigan State's a good team. You don't overlook them, but you're one game away from the title, and that if that doesn't get you up to play a game, then what will? I mean, you have a week to prepare for one game, and then you have like a
4 weeks,
five
month,
weeks off of preparing for whatever you have next.
Yep.
And this is go for broke, kitchen sink, sell out for a win. And I think Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes do that. The next is kind of a hard game to pick. Missouri and Auburn, the Battle of the Tigers in the SEC championship game, combined 2 wins in the SEC last year, and they're both Missouris. Alabama was 0-8 in the SEC last year, and then this year, of course, they win the SEC West with that fantastic game against Alabama, and they beat a couple other teams, obviously everyone in the West as well. So kind of a battle of the least expected teams ever for the SEC.
No kidding.
And especially with Missouri being a little bit of a local team as well.
Yeah, we talked about Ohio State playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think Missouri's coming in; they're playing with a chip on their shoulder because nobody took them serious when they came in and
especially
the
after
SEC.
the year they had last
year. Especially after the year they had.
It was a joke. SEC, why did you come here?
Yep.
You don't belong. You don't fit.
Yep. And I think this is going to be a fantastic game. I took Auburn in this game, and I think it comes down to experience. And Mizzou, they haven't been there yet. They haven't been on this spectrum yet. They haven't,
the stage is maybe a little bit too bright.
Yeah, and I think it is, and I think that's why Auburn wins. But it's going to be a good game, and I think when you look at Mizzou, their quarterback situation with James Franklin and Matty Mock.
Yes,
switched around there, but I think Mock might be the better quarterback. But we're going to see Pinkel go with a more experienced Franklin, and that's I think
it's a good call.
I think it's a good call, but I think it could be something that could actually hurt them.
Any times, I guess the quote is always, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks.
Right.
I don't think it's entirely the situation there. Mizzou's been great all year. Now, here's the thing with these 2 teams. Mizzou's only loss comes on a
botched field
double
goal.
Overtime off the post field goal.
Laces in.
I mean, so that's one thing. But if you look at the last 2 games that Auburn's won, it's a Hail Mary against Georgia, and that was the Immaculate Reception, college version. And then you get this incredible return off a kick against against Alabama. So I'm going to go with Auburn. I think they run the ball extremely well. I think Marshall's incredible. But I think they just have too much. They're more of an SEC team so far. I think Mizzou plays well on defense, but I just don't know if they score much.
War Damn Eagle.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Cowherd has touched up on a little bit so far since the Auburn game. There's been a tendency where when you have big wins such as what Auburn had over Alabama, the emotional letdown and how many teams retract, not retract, but don't play up to that
Slightly
level.
regress, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that being said, though, I still think Auburn comes out on top. I think with such an emotional win that they had over Alabama, going in the fact that they can win an SEC championship by not only knocking off Alabama before they even get to the championship, but then beating a quality team like Missouri, and with the season that they had last year, now how they've progressively, significantly gotten better this year. I think there's too many things in favor for Auburn to not have them coming out on top.
All right, here's the real brief subtopic here. If Auburn or Mizzou wins, they're a one-loss SEC championship team. Would they jump an undefeated Ohio State team? And I think Florida State wins against Duke. So would they jump Ohio State if Ohio State was to win?
My answer is no, because
What if Ohio State wins 21-20?
I think it's going to have to have there's going to have to be a stomping in the SEC championship, like a
convincing win,
a big
It would have to
convincing
be
win.
like a 21-point blowout.
But even so, it's never easy to go undefeated in a season, and you can say the Big Ten's down,
right,
but
they won every game. They did everything they could.
And that would be 24 in a row for the Buckeyes.
Yeah,
I
fair
mean,
enough, and they've showed that they can do it. So
Yep.
we got about 4 minutes left, and I want to talk about Sporting KC at the end as well. So let's be quick on these picks.
Okay.
Colts at Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State.
I took Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma's started off the year well. Again, the Blake Bell situation. I think Knight's a better quarterback, but I like Oklahoma State at home.
Right.
I like Oklahoma State too. Playing at home, they got too many weapons on the offensive end, and Blake Bell has been relatively inconsistent all year. And
Mike's love. Blake Bell and the Panthers. I think Oklahoma State's proved to be the class of the Big 12 so far this year with the one slip up, but they've really dominated everyone else. So I think Oklahoma State wins that game as well. Next game, Colts at Bengals. This is kind of a between the 5 and the 6, the 3 and the 4 seed, and the AFC. Likely a team the Chiefs will play as well.
I think it's a toss-up game, but after seeing Indianapolis play last week, going on the road again to Cincinnati, I just cannot see them coming out on top. So I took the Bengals.
Yeah, Andrew Luck is too much to deal with in my eyes. I think this will be a big statement game in his eye, and for him and his credibility if he can come out on top. And I want him
playoff type game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this will be a true testament to see how well he's progressed in his career. And so I take the Colts.
I think the Colts have been good. I think Luck's fantastic young quarterback, but they've been a little too shaky. And the Bengals looked good last week, 14-10 over the Chargers. That's pretty tough to keep that team to 10 points.
Yep.
Lions at Eagles.
Huge Nick Foles fan. I mean, talk about it. He's been incredible. Yeah, 18 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been unbelievable, and he's already kind of established himself as, one of the better quarterbacks in the league just off half a season.
He is the quarterback according to head coach Chip Kelly.
Yep, I like Philly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from West Coast. I grew up a big Pac-12 guy with Chip Kelly and Nick Foles. I like that combination and the way that
it's a little Pac-12 combination.
It is a great combination. And I think, like you said, Blau, Nick Foles has been outstanding so far this year, and I think he can.
He's the difference. I think he's the difference in this game, and I think it's a little bit of a shootout. I think it'd be a fun game to watch. I think there's so many weapons offensively for each team.
Yep.
It's limitless almost. Maybe more so than any other team except for Denver. The next game, the Seahawks will take their 11-1 record after a huge game and then go at the 49ers in that division. So who do you have there?
Again, I'm riding the Russell Wilson train, and I think Seattle is the best team.
It's not a bad trade to be on.
It's not a bad train. I think Seattle's the best team in the league right now, and San Francisco, they've been very up and down this year, and Kaepernick's been kind of he's kind of had
depends on which team shows up with them a little bit.
Yeah, it is, and I know you like taking the home team in this situation, and Seattle is a different team on the road, but I like the Seahawks.
I like the Seahawks also. I think even though that the 49ers D is considered one of the top of the league, they have been inconsistent, and the inconsistency on the offensive end too, whether or not Colin Kaepernick, which one is going to show up this weekend? I don't know.
I think the Seahawks win the Super Bowl if they play every game at home, and I think they get to the Super Bowl because they're going to do that. But on the road, they have not been overly impressive by any means. So I'm going to take the 49ers in this game. I think there's a little bit of a fight for a playoff berth for the 49ers here, and I think they're gonna play good football at home. So last game, then we'll talk Sporting KC. So let's be brief. The Panthers at the Saints.
I like the Saints. Regretting it a little bit after how they played Sunday, but I don't think that's the Saints team that's going to show up this week. So I like New Orleans.
In New Orleans, I don't see how you can pick against Drew Brees.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
It really is that simple. And they're a more complete team this year than most give them credit for. The Panthers will be Mike's choice. I will go with the Saints at home. So finally, we will talk about Sporting KC and Real Salt Lake, the MLS Cup final Saturday, 3 o'clock at Sporting Park.
It's going to be a great matchup, and you talk about, and I know a lot of people might not know a lot about the MLS, but Nick Raimondo, the Real Salt Lake goalie, is fantastic. And
Jimmy Nielsen's not bad himself.
And you look at Jimmy Nielsen and you say, man, you talk about great matchups as far as the goalies go.
Ironically, it's kind of like the Chiefs Denver, where Portland is so good, Real Salt Lake is so good on offense.
Yep.
And Sporting KC is so good on defense.
Yeah, and I think you look at a guy like C.J. Sapong getting up and getting a header off a corner, and maybe Graham Zuzi slotting one in on a free kick.
Yep, I'll be there. Budweiser corner, a lucky gift. So it'll be nice. Thanks for tuning in this week to the pregame. Be back next week.